Welcome to the ER Break Room, the University of Florida Department of Emergency Medicine's podcast. In here, we get to know each other, celebrate our achievements, and highlight our initiatives. I'm your host, Michael Petrauskas. Happy holidays, everyone. This episode kicks off a series highlighting researchers and their efforts in our department. But let's start with a few announcements first. I want to highlight a wellness benefit that many may not know about. The College of Medicine hired 2 new therapists, 1 psychologist and 1 mental health counselor, to provide free counseling to our employees. All faculty, staff, and residents are eligible for 6 free counseling sessions per year. Before and after hours appointments are available. Please see the link in the show notes to learn more and request an appointment. The Department of Emergency Medicine's holiday party is this Friday, December 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Touchdown Terrace in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. This should be a very festive event. Residency Program Director Dr. Lars Beatty will be hosting a special holiday journal club and potluck at his home on Wednesday, December 20th at 5:30 p.m. Please see your email to RSVP and to read the journal article regarding resident wellness. On to Highs of the Month. Welcome to Anya Nieves, who is our new Administrative Specialist 2. Congratulations to this year's Exemplary Teacher Award recipients, Drs. Lars Beatty, Marco Elegante, Judy Lucas, Nick Maldonado, Mike Marchick, Ronnie Wren, David Roberts, Caroline Srihari, and Meredith Thompson. Thank you for all that you do, and we are so lucky to have you teaching us. Last year, our chair, Dr. Mary Patterson, announced on this podcast that Dr. Carolyn Holland would be playing in a holiday concert. Dr. Holland is part of the Gainesville Pops, which is an invitation-only wind ensemble made up of local musicians and directed by legendary R. Gary Langford, the former director of UF's marching band, concert band, and jazz band. I apologize to Carolyn for not announcing her concert in advance this year. However, I did attend her concert this past weekend. Wow, I was just blown away. This concert had holiday music, Christmas music, Hanukkah music, even Disney music. It was exhilarating, it was upbeat, and the perfect event to set the holiday mood. Even my 2-month-old Aziza loved it. I learned from Carolyn after the concert that the band performs 4 times a year throughout the year, all for free. So please see the show notes for a link to the Gainesville Pops and their performances. Hopefully you can attend one of their future concerts. I promise you won't regret it. My first guest today on the ER Break Room is Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw is a clinical research coordinator, 3, and I recently learned the longest standing member of the kind of core research group. Well, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Michael.
So tell me, so first, am I right about that? You, in terms of our current kind of research people in the department, you've been around the longest, correct?
I have. So I started within the department in 2015, I believe it was.
Yep.
I started in with when Dr. Carmel Ellie was the director of research.
Gotcha.
And I've been here ever since.
Wow. And I've heard amazing things about her, and maybe one day I can even get her to lure her to come back and come on the podcast and talk to us all, because her story and career sound incredible. But that's for another day. But how about you today? Let's start with you, because this is our little kickoff of several podcasts about the research mission of our department. And I thought it'd be very appropriate that you come on and talk, because you've been here for 8 years now, and you've seen things and changing and growth and everything else, and have some perspective. So where are you from, Matt?
So I'm originally from a little town in, I say South Florida, but it's more the Treasure Coast, Vero Beach.
Vero Beach. Okay. Why is it called the Treasure Coast? What's that mean?
So it's because of Mel Fisher, and so he was a treasure hunter and expeditionist, and would typically hunt treasure, I guess, on that side. And because of the way the current is, whenever there was a shipwreck or whatever, the way the current moved the loot or, the treasure, it was all along the Treasure Coast. So that's how it kind of got its name.
Really? And so Mel Fisher was this famous diver or something?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Treasure hunter. There's a Mel Fisher museum.
Wow.
in Fort Pierce, which is the town just
Really?
south of us.
Wow. And this is the Atlantic side, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. This is fascinating. Melfish. I'm gonna have to look into this. This is very interesting, especially if I go down that way or something, or if I don't know, stuff, more things to explore in Florida. So
for
very cool.
sure.
So are you a beach person? I mean, you're in Gainesville now, but
I am.
yeah,
That's probably the roughest part.
yeah.
I tend to get home every month, which is
Okay.
good. I
Yeah.
at least get back home, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, even if I don't get to the beach,
Yeah.
um, our house is right on the river,
Oh,
so
that's
there's
nice.
some flowing water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Do you have access? Do you have a boat?
no, we do
No,
not.
do not. Sorry.
We have
Just kidding.
kayaks,
Kayaks, yeah, no, that's
paddleboards.
those are boats. Those are like floating on the water. That's in
Yeah,
my mind. That's boating. Like you're getting out there on the water, kind of mixing it up. That's cool. Yeah, that's very
yeah.
cool. Okay, so you go, and then where'd you go off to school, or did you? I mean, any childhood experiences that are formative, or was it college? The kind of the first
I mean, honestly,
place.
I was exposed early on to um, healthcare and
Mm-hmm.
family members who had chronic diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started my career, so to speak, in healthcare when I was 16 in high school.
Really, really, what'd you do?
Yeah. So we had a um, health careers pathway.
Mm-hmm.
It was called HOSA, or that's the organization, but it was like health careers. And I actually got my CNA license through high school and
Are
started
you
working at
kidding
the
me?
local hospital
Wow.
um, my senior year of high school.
That's incredible. I feel like that is such a huge benefit. Like, think about how
Yeah,
many high schoolers could have their CNA by the time they graduate high school and could be immediately working, making income, or continuing school while working. That's amazing benefit that your high school
yeah.
offered. Yeah. Holy
It's
cow.
weird to say,
Yeah.
I'm only in my 30s, and to say
Yeah.
I've been in healthcare for almost 20 years. It's like, how?
Yeah, right. Some people retire after being in biz something for 20 years. So that is incredible. Holy smokes. That's really cool. Okay. So then so you went off to school then, college after that? And
So
yeah,
I've done some college. I
yeah,
haven't actually
yeah,
finished. I'm
yeah.
working on finishing my healthcare administration.
Oh,
Um,
perfect. Perfect.
so, had some things in life that
Yeah,
happened, and taking care
sure.
of family members and
Absolutely. You
whatnot.
said. Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey.
So how did you go from, okay, so you went from actually direct clinical patient care with like the nursing, and then how did you end up into a career now in research? Like how'd you parlay that?
So I will say Dr. Carmel,
Okay.
Ellie.
Okay.
So
Yes. Yes.
I moved up to Gainesville
Hmm.
in 2012 and didn't
Okay.
actually start working at Shands until 2013.
Hmm.
Um, and I worked as an ER tech.
Hmm.
And that's where I first got introduced to Dr. Ellie.
Nice.
And at that time, didn't really know much about research.
Hmm.
It wasn't, back home, we were a rural community hospital, and you know, research wasn't one of those things that we
Hmm.
really did.
Hmm.
So by working with Dr. Ellie in the ER and kind of other folks, I started to learn about research.
Okay.
And it was at a point where I was getting ready to leave the ER, and still wanted to stay connected.
Hmm.
And that was the opportunity,
Yeah.
was through research and to learn about research.
Sure. Sure. Did she approach you, or you her, or she had an opening, or you approached her, or what happened? Explain how that
Yeah,
happened?
so
Yeah.
a couple of the staff in the ER was already doing research with her,
Hmm.
and we kind of approached each other. It was very interesting because she was an attending, and I had read up on some of her sepsis research,
Okay.
and started talking to her about it, and told her I was in the process of leaving the ER but kind of wanted to stay connected. And at that time, there were other attendings doing research with troponin, BNP, D-dimers, as well as health disparities things with Dr. Donna Cardin.
Okay.
So Dr. Ellie and Dr. Cardin were like the two that you kind of had to approach, so to speak, to get in.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was history from there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. So there must have been some sort of a bit of a learning curve, right, to getting into this, or talk about
Um,
that.
so yes and no. It was a
Hmm.
lot of, you know, understanding protocols and how to interpret them.
Okay.
But before coming to UF and Shands, I actually worked for the tissue bank.
Hmm. Okay.
And what we would do is we would call family members after their loved one had died and
Hmm.
consent for tissue donation. So having already having that sort of in my repertoire and being able to like just cold call a family member who just lost, their mom, dad, sister, brother, whomever, and talk about tissue donation really gave me an upper edge, I guess,
Yeah.
on consenting,
Yeah.
people for research.
Yeah, I mean, you just taught you have great communication skills, but then you also have this layer of empathy and compassion about you, or
Hmm.
like familiarity. People just feel comfortable, I feel like, around you, and then you're like a natural for this. Then, wow. And I didn't know about the tissue banks. That's really impactful work, man. That's
Yeah.
really neat. Wow, very cool. Wow. Um, and so because I never met Dr. Ellie. Just a brief give a brief overview of, because I've heard so much about her, and someday I hope to meet her. But
So she started she started the research division.
mhm.
Um, she was recruited from New York, came down, started the research mission, and her primary focus, I would say, is on sepsis and palliative care research. We've done studies with influenza, sepsis, obviously, palliative care. We're wrapping up a palliative care study with PCORI that she initially started.
Wow.
Um, it's called Impala.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so she did that. She's also um, board certified in critical care medicine,
Wow.
as well as hospice and palliative care.
Wow.
Before leaving UF, she was the CMO of Haven,
Mm.
and then she left us to become chair at UAB Birmingham.
Amazing. Incredible. Yeah, like sounds like she's perfect for that type of a leadership role. And it sounds like she also has her fingerprints still all over our department.
Oh yes, so she's actually still adjunct with us, so
Oh, wow.
still get to collaborate with her.
Amazing. That's so cool. That's really neat. Wow. All right. I mean, that almost sounds like a mentor or something too,
Oh, for
potentially, right?
sure, she
Wow.
is.
Wow. That's
We speak
incredible.
regularly.
That's incredible. Oh, wow. Okay. So talk about like what's like now you're a research coordinator. What do you do in your typical job, or your day, or a week or month, or like tell me what does your job entail?
Sure. So, my role and responsibility is the oversight of the study itself, making sure that, we're abiding by the protocol, and if there are any deviations, reporting them appropriately, making sure all of the staff on the study are familiar with and capable of performing all of the tasks related to the study, and being a resource not only to the research team but also any of our faculty, ER nurses, whomever we come in contact that might come in contact with one of our research staff.
Hmm. Okay. And how about the IRB? Do you work with
A
the
lot.
IRB? I feel like as someone who's kind of dabbling a little bit and kind of trying to get into a little more, that's always like a big intimidating thing, is the IRB and how to approach and being able to jump through the hoops and everything.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think even as a person who is somewhat seasoned with the IRB, it's it's still a bit of a thorn, but that's why we're here.
Yeah.
I feel like now within the research mission, we really do have folks who are very familiar with and willing to help out, junior staff, junior researchers, who have encountered barriers with the IRB.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a good segue too, because I was going to ask you about I mean, so this year is like another pivotal year, right, for the research mission of the department. You must be super excited about Dr. Guirgis coming in and he's assembling this team. And talk about this.
It's truly a transformative year for sure. In the past, I've seen quite a bit of transition with, when Dr. Ellie stepped down, and then there was, a lapse in true research leadership in regards to a director or vice chair, to when Dr. Merck came on. And I wasn't really involved in what was going on with that team at the time because I was really focused on the studies that Dr. Ellie was focused on, because I really aligned with the research of palliative care and sepsis. And, when Dr. Merck left, there was still quite a bit to figure out as far as, what does research look like? Mm-hmm. And where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. And we found Dr. Guirgis, and it seems like he has a vision, and it looks like it's going to be very, very much what our department needs. And, he's bringing on a different approach. A lot of his studies are grants that he's written for, and, part of the K program and the R program, the KL2 and, RO1, those sort of things. And, that was one thing that I wasn't really familiar with. A lot of the studies I worked on were all industry sponsored or NIH, sponsored studies. So getting to learn about that is good for me because, it's another thing I get to learn.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, what are some of the changes that are coming in terms of people and roles, and where do you see the department headed?
Sure. So, obviously, Dr. Guirgis started over the summer, mm-hmm. and we've hired on a biological scientist who will help do some of the sepsis-related bench work processing. So that lab is located in the North Tower. Okay. In the medical science building. Mm-hmm. And
I didn't know we had a lab. We have a lab.
Oh, so we have a couple actually.
Really?
We have two. Yeah. So we have
wow.
we have the bench lab, which Emilio is part of, and then we actually have another lab directly in the adult ER in trauma.
Wow.
Where we can do lab processing for other studies, mm-hmm. that don't necessarily require us to do the actual analysis. Mm-hmm. So we can do collection, processing, and storage as well, because there's a -80 freezer outside of trauma 3. That's ours.
Wow. So yeah, gosh, this is like blows my mind, because when I think of like emergency doctors doing research, I guess I think of like, oh, they would just kind of pull this lab value from something that resulted, but you can actually do your own experiments and calculation, whatever, in our own labs.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great. I got to see these labs. All right, I'm going to come with you, Matt. We're going to take a tour of our labs, because that is awesome. And emergency faculty and residents and students and probably can actually do some bench science even.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that we could actually get them in with Emilio and kind of learn about the bench work that he does, because he's a chemist.
Wow. Okay.
Master's in chemistry, I believe.
Yeah. Sorry, I derailed you there. I just talked about the labs here. Okay, so Emilio, we got lab space. All right, so changes in people and department headed.
We recently also hired on our new research manager, Andrew from Jacksonville. So he's gearing up and kind of helping set the groundwork and mm-hmm. infrastructure of the research mission. Him and mm-hmm. Dr. Guirgis. Yep. We're also in the process of bringing on several new research staff. Coordinator 2s and 1s to help really do the bedside, the on the ground research, consenting and blood processing, really starting to ramp up what we're able to offer, not only to our faculty and residents, mm-hmm. but also collaborating with other departments. Yeah. Yeah. We've had a long history of collaboration with CCM. Yeah. Trauma surgery.
Yes.
We've done partnerships with IDGM, our infectious disease, anesthesia, cardiology, neurology, all of it.
It makes so much sense because we are like the hub where all these specialties interface. They interface with us and the ER and other specialties, and this is where a lot of these patients get the start of the kickoff of their care. That makes so much sense. And also we have like fellowships. We have people that go into critical care from our EM group, or so that makes a lot of sense that would be part of it.
Well, we're the ones who first see the patients. Like we'll know about a patient before, if it's a sepsis patient, we'll get a sepsis alert.
Yeah.
If it's an inbound cardiac arrest, we'll get that alert. If it's a trauma patient, we've done studies with trauma, where
crazy.
They get the notifications about trauma alerts, but we have our lab right there. So we're readily accessible.
Ready to go. Absolutely. Wow. So vision, what do you think, where are we headed for the research mission of this department?
Up. Like, it sounds so cliche, but realistically, we're really rebuilding, and I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to offer again to our patients, to our fellow faculty, to the community. We get a lot of patients in the hospital, and I would probably say, I don't know, at least 50, if not more percent, present through the ER. And, a lot of people are like, oh, research, you're going to treat me like a lab animal and, like do crazy things to me. And I'm like, no, research is so much more. Let me tell you how, do you have 5 minutes? Can I explain, what we can offer?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're like the ambassador to research for the patient. I can see just them talking to you and just being transformed. Like, oh yes, I want to participate. This is important. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's all about really providing that information and making sure that they understand that, this is an extension of their care, not just, something that they have to do, or, the only way that they're going to get care is if they do research. No, this is an extension. It's actually, another set of eyes on their care.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. What study or project are you most proud of?
So we've done a lot of studies. We've participated in multi-center NIH trials with influenza, which was really interesting. And part of that actually kind of lended us to possibly participate in another study with COVID, with plasma transfusion, which we didn't get up and running here, like within our division, but so that's one. Impala, which is our palliative care research study that we're doing. It's a 2-arm study looking at how palliative care is provided, whether it be nurse-led telephonic or intervention through the palliative care clinic. And that was a study we started 6 years ago.
Wow.
And we were the second highest enrolling academic center across the nation. And it kind of also led to another training that we did, which was primer, which is delivering bad news and teaching our residents, our faculty, our nurses, how to have those difficult conversations with patients and family members in our ER.
That's such high impact. I mean, there might be that alone might be the most important thing you could do for a patient and their whole experience with our system is to
absolutely
to be appropriate and empathetic in that moment, and that's incredible. That's really neat. I can see why that'd be very meaningful to you, Matt. To switch gears to the personal, what do you like most about Gainesville? You've been here for a while now. Do you have any most about Gainesville, things you do, favorite restaurants or activities?
Hobbies. So Gainesville is tough. Like I love where I live. So I live
Hmm.
downtown. I live in the Deaf Pine area. It's
Wait, you
beautiful.
do? So do I.
Yes,
What?
really.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Caroline Srihari's right down the street from me. Like
Yeah,
I'm about like two
really.
blocks away.
I live
Yes. All right, we're
I
gonna
live
be
right
hanging
around
out,
the
Matt. All right,
yeah,
Matt, we're
I
gonna be
live right
hanging
around the
out.
corner from Caroline.
Get out of here. All right. So
Yeah.
now we have
Ask her
things.
about the story about her house and how she got it. Her and a shook.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to bring her on with me. We'll have to have an airing of the stories. Yeah. Of Caroline.
That's crazy.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you
so
lived.
I
Oh
live
yeah. I
yeah, I
appreciate.
live
Yes, being
right
able to
around the
walk, right?
corner.
Being able to
Yeah.
walk to things and do stuff. Yes. Okay. Continue,
Um
continue. Tell me about. All right. So now I
so
can understand this. Yes.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I love where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to get to work with only having to go through one red light, it's great. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
the culture,
Mm-hmm.
it's very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And, there always seems to be something going on downtown, which easy walk to Bo Diddley, easy walk to, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am one of those who is from a small town, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
grown. So I tend to support local.
That's
And the
nice.
fact that we have so many local places, whether it
Yes.
be
Yes.
afternoon,
Yes.
the top,
Yes.
um, there used to be a really good breakfast place. I think they're still open, but they have wonky hours because of
Yeah.
COVID. But East End
Oh
Eatery,
yeah, no, yes, yeah. I've been
P&G,
P&G. Yes, yeah. These are all
um,
like these are the hits right here. These are incredible
yeah,
places. Every one of these places are incredible. Oh
um,
wow.
yeah. So being able to just walk
Yes,
there,
exactly. Yeah, the walking thing is absolutely huge. Like and
yeah,
there's nothing. And we're not trying to throw shade on people who choose a different driving because there's also beautiful. I mean, beautiful neighborhoods all throughout Gainesville. Some are you just have to drive if you're going to do stuff.
right. So
My spouse and I, we came from New Orleans and then Miami, and like we always Miami's a driving city, but we live in a walking part of Miami. But then New Orleans was definitely like we walked everywhere, and we wanted when we came here, we wanted to be able to walk
mhm.
to just different events and do things, and we kind of do that same thing. Even just this past weekend was
The art fair
the art
or the
fair.
art show,
Yeah, the art show.
yeah,
Exactly. So twice we did, and we have a new baby, so we couldn't have probably done that with the new baby if we weren't just within walking distance, just to kind of jump out there for an hour or so. So
right.
I mean, yeah, I get that. I definitely get that. There's always some kind of event or something going on downtown. So
We also have the
yeah.
Hippodrome downtown.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
being
Yes.
able to just be exposed to
Yes.
various cultures, and
Yes.
there's the Ethiopian restaurant that I haven't tried yet.
I haven't been there yet either, but yes. Yes.
Just
Yes.
I appreciate all that.
Same, 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 same. I once, like, before years and years ago, I read an article about how when you live in a college town, you can get all of the culture and the experiences and and entertainment and arts and even sports of a big city without having to pay the big city prices.
Hmm.
And I was like, this was like a decade, or more ago. And it's like, oh, maybe someday I want to live in a college town. And then just kind of fate, took its course. And then here I am now in a college town. So a
And
college
I
town with a
think
lot more than just the college though.
correct.
Yes.
And I think
Right.
where
Right.
we are, like when I first moved up here, I lived in Hale
Mm-hmm.
in the center village. So there
Right.
is that culture, and it
Yes.
was its own little place.
Sure.
But I feel like downtown area, not to snub anywhere else, but I'm a little partial. um, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
we get that exposure
Yeah.
to that quote unquote college like feel,
Mm-hmm.
college town feel, but
Mm-hmm.
can also remove ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really nice.
Yeah.
Plus,
Oh,
you have the
that's
mature trees and all that. So
yes. 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 Agreed to all that. Yes. That's cool. All right. So, what final question I ask everybody? What makes University of Florida emergency medicine special?
the people.
There you go. I got to stop asking because everyone says the same thing. I'm just going to start asking.
Well,
But let me hear your take on it. Let's talk about that.
so
Yeah.
you know, we all have a different approach to things, and we're all doing a different, like, we're all here to do a different thing, a different job, and each one of our approach is different. And we can all learn from each other. And I feel like, regardless if you're an attending, and have been here for years, or, you're some, research coordinator, each one of us can learn from one another, and there is that open line of education. Like I can teach an attending can teach me, and it's not like we're all equals in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really provides a sense of community and really what makes UF special.
That's perfect. I like that. Community. I like that. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael.
Today's featured guest is Dr. Faheem Guirgis, who is a full professor and our new University of Florida Department of Emergency Medicine in Gainesville, Vice Chair of Research. Faheem, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks, Michael. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, happy to have you on. Well, this was a very appropriate time to bring you onto the podcast, and because of this, the recent the Vision Day, the Research Vision Day that you had, and this kind of renewed and invigorated focus on research in the department. And I just thought it'd be perfect to follow up that Vision Day with an interview and bringing on the podcast and really using the podcast to focus on research in a concentrated way over the next couple months.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I clarified it's Guirgis. It's a hard G, the second G. That's for all of our listeners. They'll always know forevermore. Your name will always be said perfectly, correct? Just like Petrauskas. Petrauskas will always be said perfectly forevermore, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We could only wish, right?
Yeah, and again, I don't mind how people say it, but since you asked, that's
me either. Dr. P, just don't call me late for dinner, as they say, right? And I emphasized Gainesville because you did come from Jacksonville. And we'll get to that too.
Okay.
So first of all, tell me where are you from? Tell me about your family growing up, early influences.
Yeah, for sure. I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida, and I was born and raised there actually. And my dad is a family practice doctor. My family immigrated from Egypt in the 70s. I was born in 1980. And they initially came to Chicago and then ended up in Florida because my dad did not like the cold. And they actually happened to have a really pretty good family practice residency down there. And he trained at Halifax Hospital there. And that was where I ended up being born and where I ended up spending the first 18 years of my life.
Really? That explains a lot. Because I was wondering about the Florida connection, just looking at where you've trained and done your preliminary education and everything. So okay, so you're from here, and and your dad's a family doctor, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
He practiced in Daytona for 40 plus years, almost 40 years actually.
That's fantastic. The family docs are the best, aren't they?
Yeah.
They do everything. They do what we do and even more,
Yeah.
They throw in the primary care component, the pediatric primary care component. They deliver babies. So that's cool. That's wonderful.
They did ER back then. They worked in the emergency department. And
yes.
He did that for many years, up until the late 80s. And he actually had the option to sort of grandfather in at the time, but he opted not to because he was so busy with his practice. But he did a lot of ED coverage back in the 80s when, it was still sort of emergency medicine was getting kind of worked out.
Wow.
And he worked in Leesburg. He worked all over.
Wow.
So he did a decent amount of that.
Huh. Did any of that did your father's practice or seeing what he did kind of shape you at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he was my inspiration for becoming a doctor, and just seeing how great a job he did with his patients and having like a connection. And I mean, he's in that old school group of people that just sort of lived medicine, right? So people would call him and it didn't matter the time of day. He was calling them back, and he admitted his own patients for probably 25, 30 years of the time that he practiced. So he would wake up at 5 a.m, go to the hospital, round on people, go to his office, see patients all day, go back to the hospital, do discharges and admissions and stuff, and come home. And that was how things were.
Wow. So, yeah, it was. And I'm sure he was so loved by the community because of it, because he was so involved in people's care.
Yeah. I mean, people were very upset when he retired.
Really? Oh my God. I believe it. I mean, think about how many people's lives he's touched and how dependent the system probably was on your father. That's incredible. Wow. That's cool. That's inspiring. So then you start school. Where'd you go to college? Undergrad?
So I went to the University of Miami.
Oh, you am? All right. Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so you did kind of a trifecta of great cities then, because then you went off to UM.
Yeah,
and we pre-med or
Yeah, I was microbiology, immunology, big surprise because I do sepsis research. But I gravitated towards that for some reason.
And then
I ended up at Chicago Medical School, Rosalind Franklin in 2002. Yeah, for medical school.
Yeah.
So I was in Chicago.
Yeah. What'd you think of Chicago?
I loved it. It was a great city. It took me about 2 years to figure out how to dress for the cold.
Yeah,
I will say I was a little bit miserable. I thought you could wear like jeans and like a nice jacket and you're fine. Like it's 10 degrees outside.
Yeah,
that's why long johns were. So I figured that out. But I loved Chicago, and I met my wife there.
That's huge.
When I was a third-year med student.
Wow.
And she was born and raised Chicago.
Wow. She's the Midwesterner. Nice.
Yeah. So I met her there. So that was pretty awesome.
Oh,
so it was a good time though in Chicago.
Yeah. Really so then you must get back. Does she have family still up there?
Yes.
She must get
her parents are still there. And some other family.
Perfect. So you got a connection for life now. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from the small little burbs of Chicago as well. That's why.
Oh, you are? Which suburb?
Yeah, the family's all from the south side, but then we live down in a little tiny town, kind of way out near Rockford, all past Elgin. But my family started in the city, and they just went in different directions: south side, west side, just family both sides all around the city. But it allows you to connect back to a place you wouldn't normally want to live because of how cold and gray it is, but it's nice to get back a couple of times a year, especially around the holidays and stuff. So
yeah, same here.
Yeah. So in that experience, that as a medical student, did you start? Did you start to? Did some of the seeds were they planted at that point for your passions?
Yeah. So I was inspired to be a surgeon for a long time.
Wow.
Like I thought I was going to be a surgeon all the way. And actually, one of my best friends ended up being a plastic surgeon. But we were good friends because we were both sort of on the surgery track, and we compared notes, and we would do all these things. And the nice thing about being at Chicago Medical School is like we actually rotated at a lot of different places. We didn't have our big home hospital, but I spent a lot of time at Cook County.
Yeah.
And I spent 6 months of my third year at Cook County. We spent a decent amount of time at Mount Sinai, which is in the southwest portion of Chicago, which is also an underserved community, almost even more so than Cook.
Wow.
And so those experiences over time, actually, one of the most probably formative experiences for me was actually our school was weird in that we did a third-year rotation in emergency medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was actually my first clinical rotation of my third year of med school was in the ED at Mount Sinai, which is a crazy emergency department.
I bet.
It's like, it's a tiny room, and there's a little psych area, which is like a little closed room, and super sick people and level 1 trauma. And in that part of Chicago, you're getting like 50% penetrating hardcore stuff. And so I remember it was just such a fun experience.
Yeah.
And so as I went back and forth about, surgery, because there were just some experiences that I finally sort of realized I didn't love the operating room enough to do that for my whole life. Mm-hmm. And then I was like totally lost because it was the beginning of fourth year. And I did an emergency medicine rotation at Orlando Regional, actually, because I was trying to sort of get back to Florida. And I really liked that. Yeah. And I was like, man, I think this is what I want to do. But I was really late in fourth year by the time I decided.
Wow. That's cool. That's really neat. Yeah. They wrote there was a book about Cook County, the hospital. It was the ER or the trauma center. I forget what. I don't know. I think I had it on my shelf at one point. But did you read it or see it? Or
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Maybe just called Cook County or something. But anyway, I digress. But okay. So you decided on EM. Did you start doing some of your? Did you do research throughout medical school or no?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, actually, I did. Yeah, it's so funny because, you sort of do the thing to get into medical school, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're in medical school, you're like, well, let me do this so that I can get into a good residency.
Yes.
So I had done some microbiology work when I was a medical student. Sorry, when I was an undergrad. Mm-hmm. And then in medical school, I did some hematology research about pediatric hemophilia with a doctor at Rush, who's a peds hematologist. And it was also with an orthopedic because I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic at one point. I was all over the place. And then I did some surgery research with a colorectal surgeon who did like giant this is going to sound crazy, but it was like giant condylomata, like anal condylomas.
Wow.
And he would excise these massive lesions on these patients.
Yes.
Most of them were in the underserved community. A lot of it was in HIV population that they treated. And, I thought that was cool. So we did a whole case series of these things that he did.
Wow.
I was all over the place.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of research in
That's cool. Any specific mentors or anything stick out from that time or no? Or is it more residency and beyond?
Yeah, there was one guy at Cook County who sort of inspired me to go to Jacobi.
Okay. Tell me about that. Yeah.
His name was Jordan Moskoff.
Okay.
He's still in Chicago. He probably does not remember me, but I remember him because he was impressive, like clinically. And we were at Cook, and everybody's running around, and that place is busy. It's Cook County, right?
Yeah.
And they were in the new structure, not the old structure. They had just kind of moved from their old hospital, which was that big behemoth that's down there in the middle of downtown Chicago. And I remember working with him, and he said to me, he's like, when I trained, I decided, or when I knew I was going to get training in emergency medicine, I wanted to go somewhere with a plane crash in front of me. I would know what to do. And he was like, you should go to Jacobi. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's interesting. I didn't want to go check that place out. So that was sort of what inspired me to look closer at it. And I have no ties to New York City. I had really nothing, but that stuck with me. And when I watched him work clinically, I was really impressed. I was like, wow, he's really good. Like he's different.
Yes. Yeah. So you went and checked it out and it was the one, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I was between there. Well, my wife was in Los Angeles, so we were engaged at that time. And she was in Los Angeles. So I was between, and she was actually at USC. So I was between there and LA County.
Wow.
And
another a famous program, of course, too. So, but your wife was in California, so you went east. Was she still in California when you went out to residency?
Yeah, so it was crazy. She was a year ahead of me. So for pharmacy, she ended up doing a 1-year residency in California while I was still in Chicago. Okay. Then I matched in New York. She came back to Chicago for a few months and then got a job at the New York VA. And moved out there with me. So we were apart for about a year and a half.
I gotcha. Okay, that's survivable at least.
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't horrible.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, so. Then, all right. So then, tell me about Jacobi.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a special place.
Yeah.
Crazy inner city, high volume. It was just a really cool place. When I started there, it was in the old setup, so it was like kind of like a hallway with patients on either side, and then this big aisle in the middle with patients there. And there was like this old decrepit kind of ortho room on the side that was just really like this tiny little space. And there were 2 trauma bays at the end. And I remember it was just crazy. Like the acuity was high, the patient volume, the traumas, we were just, we were just sort of immersed in it. And it was a lot of fun. And we also rotated in Montefiore, which is, and also a really, it's not a county hospital, but it's super high volume, and it's just a big room, and they have an acute side, which is really sick. And so spent 4 years there.
4-year program. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I can't say anything. I couldn't have gotten better training.
Yeah. And we talked about this before, but I just want to mention it because he did so much for me in my first 3 years out of residency. Was Dr. Norbert Elsner, who was was he at Jacobi or Montefiore?
He was at Jacobi.
Jacobi.
For a long time.
For a long time. I think he was he was QI when you were there and then became director maybe even.
That's right. He did all the QI stuff. I'm not sure what role he took on after I graduated.
He was the director. Yeah. And then he was the director at Jackson North Hospital in the EM when I was there for the last 3 years before coming to UF, and just a wonderful, kind, supportive, kind of this fatherly, mentorly figure for me right out of residency. So he was wonderful, but it was kind of neat to have that connection with you and Jacobi.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah. So so continuing on the research theme, did you do anything at in residency that's led to that continued your research or any new mentors or?
I tried to design a research study when I was like a second year resident. And I came up, I was crazy because I had no idea what I was doing. And I said this in my talk the other day. I was like, I really did not know what I was doing. I just knew I had all these questions.
That's
and
good.
So I designed this like study for like fluids and DKA. It was like basically like a clinical trial. I had no idea how hard and expensive clinical trials actually are, but I put this whole thing together. And I showed it to my program director, who was Tom Pereira, and he's amazing. And he didn't say, no, this is crazy. Like, you can't do this. He was just like, okay, kind of looked at it. Like, it's pretty cool, you know, and, you know, nothing really came of it. I wasn't able to sort of get it done, but eventually they asked me to be a chief. So I ended up taking on a chief resident role, and they had 4 chief roles. And one of those chief roles was a research chief who was supposed to help with evidence-based medicine and journal club and help residents do their projects and things like that. So I took on that role, still not having any real research training other than just the interest.
Sure.
And that was a lot of fun.
Well, that makes sense. And also, but I think, you know, naively, because I'm not a huge researcher myself, but naively, that like someone who's interested in these, you mentioned questions, like that's got to be where your interest in research stems from, right? Like
Absolutely.
Just asking big questions or maybe small specific questions and wanting to know, you know, the answer to this definitively, right? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, there's a depth to it that is very attractive, right? There's questions that come up clinically all the time,
right?
That you're like, well, why does this present a certain way, or why don't we do this a different way, or why, you know? And those are really the reasons that I do it, and I think most people do it is to try to answer those. Yeah,
and then I think you get to this next part of someone who naively asks the question, and then they try to do a trial, and it is it's a huge a mountain to surmount, right? There is a lot of work to it. You can't just ask a question, even like you very, I don't know, with blind faith devise something and even then probably didn't realize the hurdles to doing this. So then that's like where do you begin to get onto that track of being able to do this or summit the mountain or make it happen, make a question turn into a trial?
Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's what I probably spent the first 4 to 6 years of my time as faculty trying to figure out. Yeah. And really, you need training, right? Yeah. And the thing about doctors, right, is that we learn science, but we're not trained how to do science generally. Unless you get a PhD or a master's in something else, you generally don't know how to actually do sort of the scientific process. And if you want to do clinical trials, that's a fairly specific thing as well. And now with all of the new kinds of designs of trials, but like designing a trial, all of those things are things you really need like specific education in. And then, and you need a lot of mentorship. So I would say mentorship is huge. I mean, you just need people who really know that space and can help you learn how to do it. And so I think between the education and the mentorship, you need to definitely make sure you get the training. And then at some point you need to get funding to do it. Right. And so that's the other piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like part of your vision, coming to UF Gainesville and your vision here is you're bringing this, you're trying to assemble this department, this crew that will be able to give this to other people that want to be researchers or maybe already established researchers that just need a little bit of help here and there. It seems like you're bringing that level of mentorship and expertise to us.
Yeah, I mean, very much my passion, in addition to the research and patient care parts of it, is to teach other people how to do what it took me so long to figure out. Yeah. Like, I want to save people the pain of like not really knowing what it is you're supposed to do when you have all these questions. You want to do the research to answer those questions, and you don't know, how do I sort of base my career on this? How do I make this into something that's going to give me some longevity in emergency medicine, potentially change patient care, inform science, do all sorts of cool things that give you good job satisfaction and make people better.
That's awesome. Yeah. And save people the 4 to 6 years that you had to take,
Yeah. It took me 6 years to get good, solid funding. I mean, it's funding's a hard thing.
It's another beast, huh? Okay. So tell me about your interest in, you've definitely, sepsis is one of your big interests. And a lot of your research has been in sepsis.
Yeah.
Where did that stem from?
I was just, as you can tell, I was already interested in infectious diseases. Yes. I mean, it was, I actually at one point, in the midst of all the other things I thought I was going to do, I thought I might do ID for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I had this interest in that. And then, the whole Manny Rivers thing back in the day, it came out in 2001. And I was a resident, and we were trying to do early goal-directed therapy in the ED as a resident, and it was impossible. It was just so hard.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Jacksonville, I guess kind of advancing ahead, when I took the faculty position there, I had a lot of interest in advancing sepsis care in the department because I was just seeing so much of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really simplify it. And so I guess the way I got interested in it was really seeing so much of it in residency and not feeling like I could do what seemed to be the standard of care at the time.
And it seems like, it's pretty cool that you do this sepsis work, because I feel like, so much of it is owned by the intensivists, the critical care folks. And I'm obviously not to the T, but it's great that you are doing this kind of work in sepsis, because it is, I mean, we start the package, we start the bundle, and we start the ball rolling on this stuff. So
and I would say, the thing that Manny showed from his study was that what you do in the emergency department is probably some of the most important things that these patients can have, right? The way that we take care of them really dictates how they do later.
That's
right.
Awesome.
And so the whole early goal-directed therapy, I mean, they moved that to a lot of other different conditions. Stroke is the same way. Like the idea of doing things in a protocolized way very early on to start the trajectory of that patient in a good direction is absolutely correct. And so even though early goal-directed therapy didn't end up being something that we all carried on, we realized that just good care was super important in the first hours of patient care. And if you look at all the clinical trials that have been done, it's all first 24 hours, right? The vast majority of it is early. And I know there are people who say, okay, well, at 72 hours, obviously that's not the only thing, but one of the most influential things, excuse me, is what happens to those, how we take care of those patients early on in the emergency department. Yeah, that's cool. And so sepsis, I'm fascinated by your latest project with lipids and sepsis. It just seems, can you talk about not to make this a long deep dive lecture, but what's your hypothesis with lipids? I mean, people think about lipids, they don't think about sepsis or being part of the sepsis pack. Where's this coming from? Yeah. So when I was in Jacksonville in 2014, there was a mentor of mine. Her name was Sunita Dodani. I think she's moved on. She was at EVMS for a while. And I think she moved again somewhere else. But she had been studying dysfunctional HDL, which is essentially your good cholesterol gone wrong. If there's a lot of inflammation, your good cholesterol won't work properly. It actually becomes pro-inflammatory, causes all these problems. And I was trying to figure out what to do for my K award. And I started reading the cholesterol literature as it regards to sepsis. Very nerdy thing to do. I'm sure that's not what a lot of people do, but I started looking at it and I started realizing whoa, there is some crazy signal here. Like this is a really interesting thing. And what you start to see is, if you just look at the literature, even from 20 years ago, is that cholesterol levels go down sharply when you have sepsis. And what I noticed from that literature was that nobody really figured that out. Nobody really knew why. What they did know was that the lower it is, the worse you seem to do. And septic patients are lower than other acute conditions if you compare it to trauma, if you compare it to other conditions that are acute. If you look at somebody's cholesterol levels, sepsis patients usually have the lowest ones. And so that's how I devised my K. I devised my K around that and understanding how dysfunctional HDL might relate to organ failure. And that's what I spent a lot of time on about 5 years ago. And is the HDL a marker of sepsis, or is this also being used to treat sepsis? Or are you doing both? Do you address both possibilities? Yeah. So it is a marker in the sense that, like I said, the severity of it going down or being deranged is kind of I would say associated with outcomes. But it is actually potentially mechanistic in that HDL does really important things. Like it actually takes toxins out of your body when you have sepsis. It also helps your body make cholesterol. It fights off inflammation, right? So it does a lot of things that you would want to happen during sepsis. The problem is it gets all inflamed during sepsis. It doesn't function properly, and then it doesn't do what it's supposed to. So there's actually some collaborators of mine. There's one of them in France. His name's Sebastian Tanaka. and he actually is working on recombinant HDL in sepsis. There's a company over there in France who actually is moving that into later phase trials.
Wow, that is fascinating stuff. Wow, very cool. I listen to a lot of Peter Attia podcasts, and he deep dives some of these things and these pathophys of things, and lipids is one of his big passions. So this to me is fascinating. To tie it into not primary care disorders, but an acute care thing like this is super interesting. Wow, I can't wait to see the results.
If you're ever interested, and you have a sepsis patient and you're in the ED or a cholesterol panel or a lipid panel, it comes back in like an hour. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's I'm not saying for research. I'm just saying. This is actually something that at my prior institution people started to do. Actually, they would admit people to the ICU, and people started ordering lipid panels because they wanted to see how low the cholesterol levels were, because it kind of gives you a sense of how sick someone is. Wow.
I can't wait to hear more results from your work and stuff. This is fascinating.
Thank you.
Real quickly, you mentioned an R award. Is that correct?
Yes.
A grant. Okay. Can you quickly just for the non-research minded people, like what is an R and a K grant and an AH? Just a quick overview for everyone.
The whole alphabet soup of NIH.
Alphabet soup. There you go.
And also other federal agencies that use the same terminology, like HRQ and others. So a K is just is a grant that funds you for 75% of your time to learn how to do research. So going back to your question about how do you learn clinical trials? A K grant would be one of the mechanisms that you would use to do that. And it's called, or the other way of calling it is a career development award. But that's the NIH version of a career development award.
I see.
Mostly what those grants pay for is to protect your time, to let you learn how to do research. And then you get 25% time to do whatever else. And our grant is more for the project. So it doesn't fund as much of, say, my time or the researcher's time, but it funds a lot more of the program as a whole. So they're generally bigger grants, and they're really to fund the research. And so they have a much bigger budget because you're paying for other people, you're paying for tests, you're paying for, if it's a clinical trial, you're paying for all the things to do a clinical trial. And so that's kind of what our grant is. And then there's other mechanisms, U grants and things like that, that also can be used for that.
Wow, that's fantastic. No one's ever explained that to me before. That's actually really helpful. And it makes sense now where I think about people who've gotten different grants and where they are in their career and stuff. That makes a lot of sense. Cool.
Yeah, so the goal is to really bridge from the K to the R. That's kind of like what people try.
Gotcha.
That's their goal is what they're
Gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah. Cool. All right. So, so tell me about you've come here. How do we lure you away from the beach in Jacksonville? You were there a number of years, and don't get me wrong. I moved to Gainesville from Miami. I love Gainesville, but I mean, we must have had something here. Was it the prospect of building something your own, or go for it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think yes, I think very much it was the prospect of building something of my own. And I knew you all had the emergency department in Gainesville has a ton of potential in terms of research and the patient population and just all of what's seen here in this emergency department. And so I was really intrigued and excited by that. I also, obviously I had pretty close ties with Rose Fernandez, who was in Jacksonville for a while, and spoke with her, and obviously Mary being amazing, Mary Patterson being amazing, and just multiple conversations with them made me super comfortable that really was the next step for me. And I knew that the other opportunities in terms of research and collaboration were huge as well, because over the time that I spent in Jacksonville, I actually had a lot of collaborators in Gainesville already. And so I knew that being on the same campus, I could potentially collaborate even better and also have a laboratory that could do more. And so, and this is nothing, against where I was before, but it was just opportunity, and I think it was just a phenomenal opportunity for me that at a certain point I had to say, well, it would be pretty unreasonable for me to not make this jump. Right. And to really go to the next place. And for me, it was really advancing the work that I'm doing because I believe that hopefully one day it'll make things better for people. And I had to think, well, where right now am I most likely to be successful? And I felt like it was really this opportunity in Gainesville.
That's I didn't even think about that. You're tapping into the entire network of resources of the whole university. It's all right here at your fingertips.
Absolutely, which is an amazing thing for our faculty too. It's like just to know that we have access to all these things. I mean, I have collaborators in basic science. I have a collaborator, Kylie Graham, who's a computer engineer who does AI genomics stuff, and we work together. I work with the biostatistics folks and others, so it's like, it's just been really, really awesome since I've been here.
That's great. And I forgot, you mentioned this in the Vision Day, and I both Mary and Rose talked about, you all had a shared kind of mentor at Jacksonville. This gentleman must have been just an incredible human being.
Bob Weirs, yeah, he was amazing. Gosh, I think so. Bob was like the first person. I don't know if you looked at any old versions of Annals of Emergency Medicine, not even old, but before he passed away in 2017, he would literally almost have his own editorial every month. They would just let him write because he was just so amazing. And so he was a huge patient safety expert. He was also somebody who was sort of brought back into research. He actually went into community practice for a while and then went back to Jacksonville and then started sort of going after research. He went off and got a PhD in, I think, industrial engineering or something in the 2000s somewhere. And he was just an amazing, groundbreaking individual. And I used to always joke that he was so smart that when he would tell a joke, I needed like a dictionary so I could understand what he was talking about. But he was just amazing. And, so when I got to Jacksonville and I realized I wanted to do research, I looked around. I was like, well, who knows how to do this? And I realized he was in my department, and he was such a humble, quiet person that you could totally miss him, right? But I found out how important and amazing he was, and I went and knocked on his door, and I was like, hey, I want to do this. Can you help me with it? And he was like, oh, I'm so happy to do that. I'd love to do that. And so I spent 3 or 4 years every 2 weeks in his office for a couple of hours. And he literally sat there and analyzed my data, and I just stared at what he was doing on the screen and just tried to absorb things.
Wow.
And so that was how I learn to do some statistics and stuff. And it encouraged me to get training later on as well, like take some classes and stuff like that.
Incredible. Is there one publication you're particularly most proud of?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Well, I really I guess as a group of things, I like a lot of the clinical articles that we've done. And one of the ones was the one that we did for the sepsis committee in Jacksonville, which when we started a sepsis committee in 2014, it didn't exist before then. And I chaired it because it was really for lack of anyone else who wanted to do it. I was just like, okay, I guess, it kind of gets back to my feeling that when you do research, it has to relate to what you do clinically. Otherwise, why am I doing research? I feel like those things have to go along together because first and foremost, we're physicians, right? So I took on the committee, and we realized there was no sepsis alert system, and people were starting to have those. And at the same time, one of the guys who worked in quality had figured out how to code in the background of Epic to create a sepsis recognition tool. Okay. And so working with him in that group, and actually Kelly Gray-Urim, who is the chief quality officer there, we decided, and actually Fred Moore, who is my mentor in Gainesville, who had already implemented a similar system at Texas before he came to Gainesville. I looked at his paper that he shared with me about the Muse system, and we took that and we modified it. And we turned it into essentially an alert tool that would go in the background of Epic that would actually send out pages to all the providers. And so every hour it would go through Epic and it would find people with abnormal vitals and lab signs, and it would send you a page because we use pagers there. So you get a page and it would be like, oh, look, so-and-so's white count is like 25 and their heart rate is whatever. And so we published on that and the implementation of the sepsis protocol, and showed that it saved lives and saved the hospital money in terms of admissions. And that came out in 2015. But I love that stuff because it just showed that if you take a little bit of a chip away at that block of okay, maybe these outcomes aren't great, what can we do? Then you can actually make some real impact. And
that's
it
inspiring. Yeah, that's inspiring. Cool. And I feel like you're going to do that here too, with the work that you do. That's cool. That's a cool story. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it was cool. It was fun to do it as a team too. It was a huge team effort. Like there were so many people involved. Mm-hmm. And it's still that way.
And it's nice to know that like the research is it's team sport. You got it's a whole crew of different people in different roles, and I'll be interviewing some different people that do different things with your team. So I think that's really cool about it too.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was a big deal between nursing, us, the ED, the ICU. Mm-hmm. We had residents. There were all sorts of people involved in it.
Very cool. What's your vision for our research department here?
Yeah,
at Jim, 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, whatever you want to do. What are your thoughts?
I think a few things. One is I really want to I want us to inform changes in care and policy in like 5 years.
Cool.
It might sound like a lofty goal, but I really feel like we could get there. And the stuff that we're doing between the multiple different research faculty, doing awesome things. I think that we really could do that, between clinical trials, disparities work, international health, cardiac arrest stuff that each of our, all of our different faculty are working on. I think it'd be awesome to really do that. And I want our department to get national recognition for that. But I think at the very end of the day, it comes down to patient care, right? And so how do we make things better for patients? That's what I'd like to see in 5 years, is that in some impactful way, we've advanced care.
Wow. That's awesome. That's cool. If we do that, that's a career goal, right? That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we do it every day in the ED anyway, right? On an individual basis. But if we can do it in a big way that really impacts everybody, through research, awesome. And I think it would be great. Yeah,
I agree. That'd be amazing. Do you welcome all comers? Students, residents, fellows? I mean, is your door open in terms of people if we want to get involved, if people want to get involved? Is there a role for anyone, would you say?
Yes, literally anyone. I mean, that's something that I've also done in the past, is working with residents, working with students. Like I said, from any discipline, I think it's a lot of fun. We just sort of bring people into our group, and I like people to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's good for people to come motivated. And if they want to be on a paper, or they want to get an abstract or present something, that's really my goal for people when they get involved with our group, is to have them get something tangible at the end of it.
Great. Oh, very cool. Very cool. All right. To switch gears, to make a little bit, personal here. Do you have family in town? Do you have any hobbies or interests? How have you gotten your feet wet in Gainesville so far?
Yeah. So, I have 3 kids. I have my wife. And I'll be totally honest with you, I'm still commuting. So I am figuring that out. Yeah. I still live in
Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And it's been fine so far. But we decided that one change at a time. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think I look back on it and I think, it was a little bit of a crazy idea to not move initially. Mm-hmm. But I also realized it's not that bad. And when I talked to my wife about it, she said, we'll figure it out. But we'll start this way and we'll do one change at a time. So
That's fair. That's totally fair. And then you have 3 hobbies. I was like, you have 3 kids. I mean, do you have time?
Barely. So I like tennis. I like boating, outdoor activity stuff. Those are kind of sort of my bread and butter. But it's busy. Mostly we're doing a lot of shuttling the kids around to different things. Right. That's kind of the phase of life that we're in.
But you're probably living vicariously through their interests and their little activities and classes and groups and everything else. So.
100%. Which is awesome too.
Which is awesome, right?
It's okay.
Exactly.
Their hobbies are pretty much our hobbies.
There you go. Right. There you go. Well, parenting and medicine was my topic last month. So I'm all that's great. That's cool. It's nice you have a big family. And then you're new to the department to our UF. I mean, you've been with UF for years now in Jacksonville, but what do you think makes University of Florida emergency medicine special?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an amazing department. So far everybody's been like so kind and great to me. I think, I always come back to this, is I think the patient population is really amazing. And I think there's some really excited, talented residents and faculty that I'm super excited to work with. And I think there's so much here, so much potential. And so I think what makes it amazing is the people. whether it's the people we take care of in the emergency department or the people that make up the department that work here, both faculty, residents, nursing, and students. I think that's really what makes it great. And so, I'm excited to be here overall, but yeah.
Yeah. That's the perfect way to end it. So, Faheem, thank you so much for coming on. We look forward to what you're going to do with us over the next number of years.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate the invitation.
That's all for this episode. Special thanks to our chair, Dr. Mary Patterson, for supporting this podcast, and to Dr. Giuliano DePortu for composing our theme music. I'm Michael Petrauskas. Be well.